The shrill scream echoed across Greenwood Academy, cutting through the thick fog that hugged the forest on its outskirts. Lila's heart pounded in her chest as she sprinted along the narrow path, clutching the torn notebook against her chest like it was a lifeline. Stay quiet, she muttered under her breath, but the sound of footsteps behind her betrayed her resolve. She dared a glance back, catching the shadow of Principal Duval's heavy coat disappearing into the mist. The panic in her chest was a cold, suffocating weight. She darted between the trees, branches whipping her face, and stumbled into a clearing she barely recognized. The old wooden cabin, abandoned and half-sunken into the forest floor, loomed ahead. It was her only sanctuary, the place matron Celine whispered about in hushed tones. Lila pressed herself against the wall, gasping as the footsteps grew nearer. "You can't hide from me, Lila." A voice hissed through the fog, sharp and commanding. She swallowed hard and prayed they wouldn't find her today. Inside the cabin, the air was damp and smelled of moss and old wood, but it was better than facing the wrath of Duval. She slid the notebook under the loose floorboard and sank to the ground. Her mind raced with the events that had brought her here. Just a few weeks ago, she had been a normal scholarship student, eager to study, to excel, to escape the shadows of her orphaned past. And now she was running for her life, hiding in the wilderness, carrying a secret that could destroy everything. She pressed her hands to her stomach, a sharp pang reminding her of the life growing inside her. Nathaniel's face flashed in her mind, the soft smile, the whispered promises in the empty hallways. How had their secret love become a nightmare? How had she ended up in this place, isolated, hunted, afraid? The cold wind rattled the broken window, and Lila shivered, but it wasn't just the cold. It was the fear of being discovered, the fear of what Duval might do if she found her secret. A faint sound of laughter drifted from the forest. Not Nathaniel's, not a friendly voice. Malicious, calculating laughter that made her stomach turn. She knew immediately it was Duval's doing. She could feel the weight of that woman's authority, the cruelty that hid behind her composed exterior. "I won't let you take this from me," Lila whispered to the growing life inside her, her fists tightening against the damp floor. She would fight. She would survive. Even if the world was against her. Lila's isolation didn't mean she was entirely alone. Occasionally, a figure would emerge from the shadows beyond the trees. Madame Isolde, the mysterious woman the villagers whispered about. Sometimes judgmental, sometimes strangely gentle, Isolde brought small parcels of food and water, and in her quiet way, reminded Lila that not all humans were cruel. But even Madame Isolde could not protect her from Duval, not completely. Lila's heart ached as she remembered the brief moments of warmth, the soft encouragement, and the whispered warnings. "The world takes and it never returns, child. Guard yourself well." Suddenly, the distant crunch of leaves made her freeze. Someone was coming. Her breath caught in her throat, and she pressed her back against the cabin wall, every muscle coiled with tension. She wanted to scream, to call for help, but no one could hear her here. The forest was her prison now, her protector, her enemy. Every step, every snap of a twig, every whisper of wind felt like a threat. And through it all, the baby inside her moved, a small, stubborn reminder that she had to survive. She whispered softly to it, "Hold on. We're going to get through this." She didn't know how, she didn't know when, but she promised herself that she would endure. She would endure for both of them. The footsteps stopped. Silence pressed down on the clearing like a living thing. Then a soft, mocking voice floated through the fog. "You think hiding changes anything, Lila? Secrets always surface." She wanted to run, to scream, to fight, but she stayed perfectly still, holding her breath. She had no choice but to wait and hope that the shadows would swallow her. Lila didn't know it yet, but this moment, the fear, the isolation, the trembling heart, was only the beginning. Every secret she had, every moment of stolen joy with Nathaniel, would lead her deeper into danger. But the worst was yet to come. A darkness that no forest could hide her from. A truth that would shake Greenwood Academy to its core. And as the fog thickened, wrapping the trees and the cabin in a ghostly embrace, Lila made a silent vow to survive. Not just for herself, not just for the baby, but for the vengeance that would eventually rise from the shadows. The whispers of the hollow were just beginning. Lila's mind drifted back to the days before the forest became her prison. Greenwood Academy had seemed like a promise, a place where she could escape the shadows of the orphanage and prove she was more than her past. Her scholarship had been a ticket to a better life, and she had thrown herself into studies, excelling in every subject. But nothing had prepared her for Nathaniel. He wasn't supposed to matter, at least not in a world governed by rules and strict hierarchies. He was the principal's son, polished, charming, and impossibly distant. Yet, when their eyes met across the sunlit courtyard, something unspoken connected them. It had started with whispered greetings, brief glances, and shy smiles in the library corners. Then came the notes, folded and hidden in lockers, each one carrying secrets that weren't meant to leave their hands. "I can't stop thinking about you," Nathaniel had written once, the ink smudged where he'd been nervous. Lila had pressed the paper to her chest, feeling a warmth that made the world outside the library feel cold and unimportant. "We shouldn't," she had whispered when they met under the old oak tree behind the main hall. "But I can't stop either." Their meetings had become the only moments where she felt alive. Every word, every touch, every stolen laugh was a defiance of the oppressive world around them. But love in secret always carries a shadow. She had known it from the start. And yet, when the consequences arrived, she had never imagined they would come with such cruelty. The first time she realized she was pregnant, panic had knotted in her stomach tighter than any fear she had felt before. She had hidden in her room, trembling, staring at the tiny life growing inside her. She remembered whispering to the darkness, "Please, Nathaniel, help me. Please." But the world was silent, and she knew she had to act alone. Then came the discovery. Matron Celine, who had always been sharp-eyed and suspicious, noticed Lila's frequent trips to the infirmary, the pale skin, the quiet withdrawal. The confrontation had been merciless. "You think you can hide this?" Celine had demanded, her voice sharp, trembling with fear of what Principal Duval might do. Lila had only nodded, her throat tight, unable to speak the truth. It was a secret that could ruin lives or take them. And sure enough, Duval learned. The principal's icy composure had been replaced by a cold fury that chilled Lila more than the forest ever could. "This cannot leave these walls," Duval had said, her eyes flashing with menace. "You, the child, your friends. None of you will breathe a word. If anyone tries, I will make sure they regret it." Lila had felt trapped, suffocated, powerless. Her confinement in the forest cabin had been swift. A single harsh order, and she was dragged from the dormitory, ignored protests, ignored tears, and abandoned at the edge of the academy's grounds. She had arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, shadows stretching like claws across the trees. The cabin was empty, cold, unwelcoming. But at least it was her own space, her only space. And yet she had never been truly alone. Madame Isolde had found her within days. Lila remembered the first encounter vividly. A tall, wiry woman with silver-streaked hair and piercing green eyes, carrying a bundle of food. "You mustn't speak to anyone about me," Isolde had said, her voice stern yet not unkind. Lila had nodded, unsure whether to fear or trust this mysterious visitor. Over time, Isolde brought small comforts. Warm broth, a blanket, quiet counsel, and the unspoken promise that someone cared. Even so, each day felt heavier. Hunger gnawed at her, exhaustion pulled her down, and the isolation pressed into her like a living thing. She began speaking aloud to herself, or rather, to the baby growing inside her. "It's just us now," she whispered one night, her voice trembling. "You and me. We have to survive. Promise me you'll fight too." The tiny kicks from inside seemed like a reply, a small heartbeat against the silence. Lila thought about Nathaniel often, remembering the warmth of his hands, the quiet moments in the library, the way he had promised that everything would be okay. She had believed him once wholeheartedly, but now, she didn't know if he even remembered her, or if he thought she was gone. The thought twisted her heart in ways that made the nights unbearable. Suddenly, a rustle outside the cabin broke her reverie. Her body froze. "Who's there?" she called, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. Silence. Then a faint whisper carried by the wind. "Lila." She felt her chest tighten. No one knew she was here. Except she wasn't sure. Shadows moved between the trees, and her pulse raced as she pressed herself against the wall. The forest had become more than a hiding place. It was a test of endurance, a crucible in which every emotion, fear, anger, grief, hope, burned hotter than ever. Every night she wondered if she could survive the cruelty of Duval, the loneliness, and the uncertainty of what was coming. But she also knew one thing. She could not give up. Not yet. Not while the baby inside her depended on her. Not while the faint spark of vengeance, though she didn't fully understand it, waited in the shadows. And through it all, the whispering winds of Greenwood seemed to echo a promise. Those who do wrong, those who betray, will eventually face the consequences. Lila shivered at the thought, gripping her stomach as if to physically protect the life within her. She whispered softly into the empty cabin. "We'll make it, I promise. No matter what they do, no matter what happens, we'll survive." If you're already feeling the tension and can't wait to see what happens to Lila and the baby, smash that like button, subscribe, and leave a comment predicting whether she'll survive Duval's wrath. This story is just getting started. The next morning, a thick mist clung to the cabin like a shroud. Lila's eyes fluttered open, her body aching from the restless night. Every sound, the whisper of leaves, the creak of a branch, the distant call of a bird, felt magnified. She pressed her hands against her stomach and felt a tiny defiant kick. "I know it's hard," she whispered, her voice cracking, "but we can't let them win." Weeks had passed since she'd been abandoned here, each day blending into the next, each night heavier than the one before. She had rationed the food Madame Isolde brought, hiding small pieces under her pillow. Each sip of water felt like a victory, each warm bowl of broth a fleeting comfort. But it wasn't enough. Her body grew weaker, and the shadow of desperation settled into her bones. And then came the whispers. Not the forest wind, but something else. A faint, almost human cry carried through the trees at night. Lila had first thought it was her imagination, perhaps the echoes of her own fear. But the sound persisted. A low, sorrowful wail that seemed to call her name. She sat up one night shivering, her heart hammering. "Who's there?" she demanded, her voice shaking. Silence. Only the wind answered. Yet she could feel it. An awareness just beyond the shadows, watching her, waiting. The isolation was unbearable, but worse was the knowledge that Duval was still out there, still plotting, still watching. Lila had learned quickly that the principal's cruelty was legendary. There were stories whispered among the older students. Girls confined in basements, threatened into silence, punished for the smallest misstep. And now Lila had become another mark of her wrath. She remembered the moment Duval had appeared in her dreams, a ghostly vision of authority. Cold, unyielding, and merciless. "Secrets cannot survive, Lila," the vision hissed, eyes burning. "You will vanish, and no one will remember your name." Lila's stomach churned, but she whispered back, defiant, even if only to herself, "You underestimate me. You have no idea what I'm capable of." Her thoughts drifted to Nathaniel. Did he even know she was gone? Did he believe Duval's lies that she had disappeared, or worse, that she had made a choice to leave? The memory of their last conversation before he left for university was a knife in her chest. "I'll come back," he had promised, his hands warm around hers. "Nothing will keep me away." And she had believed him. But belief had not saved her. Belief had not kept her from being trapped in this nightmare. The days bled into each other, each one an unbroken chain of fear and uncertainty. She spoke to Madame Isolde whenever she came, their conversations brief, weighted with unspoken threats. "Be careful what you hope for, child," Isolde had warned one rainy evening, the hood of her cloak dripping. "The world can take everything in the blink of an eye. And sometimes it takes more than the world itself." Lila had shivered at the words, not fully understanding their meaning. Then the first signs of danger became physical. One morning Lila awoke to find deep scratches along the cabin walls, as if something or someone had tried to break in during the night. Her heart raced as she ran her fingers along the grooves, feeling the raw jagged wood under her fingertips. Fear gripped her like a living hand. "It's just the forest," she whispered, but even she didn't believe it. Madame Isolde arrived that evening, sensing the shift in the air. "You are not alone in this," she said, placing a hand on Lila's shoulder. Her eyes, sharp and unwavering, seemed to pierce through the mist. "But you will have to be strong. The child you carry, it is special. And the world will not wait for weakness." Lila felt a flicker of something strange, hope, fear, and a hint of dread all intertwined. Night fell, darker than usual, and the cries returned, louder this time, echoing through the mist. Lila pressed herself to the floor, wrapping her arms around her stomach. "I don't know what you are," she whispered into the shadows, "but you're not going to scare us. We will survive. We have to." She didn't know if the voice she heard was real, or some figment of her terror, but she felt it responding, as if acknowledging her defiance. And somewhere beyond the trees, Duval's shadow moved, relentless, patient, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Every decision Lila made now mattered. Every small victory was a step against the inevitable cruelty closing in on her. She clenched her fists and whispered again, louder this time. "We will not be broken. Not by her, not by anyone." The forest seemed to pulse around her, alive with unseen eyes. Lila felt the first surge of determination, mingled with a cold, unfamiliar thrill. Whatever was coming, and she knew something was coming, she would meet it head-on. For the child, for herself, and for the vengeance that had not yet awakened but was already stirring in the shadows. The days in the cabin blurred together, each one heavier than the last. Lila felt the baby moving more strongly now, every kick a reminder that she could not falter, could not surrender to the fear that gnawed at her. She rationed her food carefully, warmed herself by the fire, and whispered constantly to the life growing within her. "We're almost there," she murmured, pressing her palms to her swelling stomach. "Just hold on, okay? We're going to survive this." But the forest was no longer silent. Every rustle of leaves, every snap of a branch made her flinch. Shadows seemed to shift just beyond her vision, and sometimes she swore she could see figures watching her through the fog. That night the cries returned, sharper, more urgent. Lila shivered and wrapped herself around her stomach, whispering, "Who are you? What do you want from us?" There was no answer, only the echo of her own fear bouncing back at her. Meanwhile, Greenwood Academy was alive with rumors. Clara and Hope, two students who had been close to Lila, began noticing oddities. The empty dormitory where Lila had slept, the whispered warnings from other girls, the sudden, unexplained absence of their friend. Their curiosity overcame their fear, and one afternoon, under the pretense of collecting supplies for the art room, they ventured into the forest, hearts pounding with guilt and anxiety. They found the cabin as the sun dipped low, the mist curling around the trees like fingers. The door creaked ominously as they pushed it open, and there she was, Lila, pale, thin but alive, clutching her stomach with trembling hands. "Oh my God, Lila!" Clara whispered, rushing forward. Hope grabbed her friend's arm, eyes wide. You're pregnant?" Lila's gaze darted between them, panic rising. "You can't tell anyone," she hissed, her voice shaking. "If they find out, if Duval finds out, I'll never survive. Promise me you'll keep this secret." Their nods were frantic, desperate. Lila exhaled shakily, relief mingled with fear. Okay, she whispered. "But you have to understand, it's not just the baby. It's them. The principal, she won't stop. She'll do anything to protect herself and Nathaniel. Anything." The girls sat with her for hours, whispering, offering bits of food, and trying to make the fear a little lighter. Lila told them in fragments, her voice tight with emotion, about the isolation, the threats, and the mysterious woman, Madame Isolde, who had been bringing her small comforts. "She's strange," Lila admitted, eyes distant. "Sometimes she frightens me, but she's the only one who's helped me. Only her and you two." By the time the girls left, the forest had darkened into a black velvet night, and the distant cries had grown louder, almost insistent, echoing in Lila's ears. She pressed herself to the floor, trembling. "We're not alone," she whispered into the shadows. "We're never alone now." Meanwhile, Duval had not forgotten her. News of Lila's absence reached the principal's ears, but she refused to believe that her son, Nathaniel, could have any involvement. The thought of scandal made her blood run cold. "She is not allowed to ruin this," Duval muttered, pacing her office. "If she has the child, it will vanish. I will make certain of it." Her hands clenched into fists as she plotted, every step meticulously cruel. Back in the cabin, Lila's body began to betray her. Exhaustion, hunger, and stress weighed her down, and each day she feared the growing burden inside her. She often cried quietly, whispering apologies to the unborn child. "I'm sorry. I wish I could protect you better," she murmured, tears running down her cheeks. Yet every time she felt the baby kick, she drew strength. "We have to survive," she said aloud. "No matter what they do, we will survive." The forest itself seemed to respond, or perhaps her fear simply made it feel alive. Twigs cracked under invisible feet, shadows danced where there should have been none, and sometimes a soft, sorrowful whisper carried through the mist, calling her name. Lila would press herself against the wall, shaking, heart racing. "I don't know what you are," she said once, voice breaking, "but you're not going to hurt us. I won't let you." And though the voice never answered, she felt the faintest brush of presence, like a promise that someone or something was watching over her. By the end of that week, the danger had escalated beyond anything she had imagined. Duval's reach extended even into the forest. Lila discovered signs of intrusions, footprints in the mud, broken branches, items she had left carefully arranged, now disturbed. Her fear sharpened into vigilance. Every noise, every movement became a potential threat. Lila's thoughts drifted to Nathaniel again. Did he remember her? Did he think she had simply disappeared, swallowed by the shadows? Or had Duval lied to him, painting her as reckless, unworthy, gone? She pressed her face to her hands, whispering into the darkness, "Please, if you're out there, don't forget us. Don't forget me." The forest was no longer just a hiding place. It had become a battlefield, a prison, a crucible where her endurance, her courage, and her love would be tested. And through it all, the unseen presence in the shadows waited, patient, as if it knew that the time for awakening was drawing near. If Lila's struggle has you on edge, make sure to subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts on what you think Duval will do next. Every moment counts in this story, and the tension is only growing. The secret has been planted, and secrets never stay buried for long. Subscribe for the next episode, like this video to support the story, and comment below. Who do you think will discover the truth first?